All right, welcome back to Intro to Web 3223 here at Alfred State. We're going to be going over events. All right, so this is in tandem with the uh, manipulating the DOM. So between these two, generally speaking, we use events to allow users to interact with the software that we have created, and based on that state, do something that they expect that something like a button to do. Now, one of the problems of teaching courses like this for intros is that if we have a topic and we're trying to isolate a topic and is highly dependent on another topic, which one are you going to teach first? Because they're both interdependent. So the other topic was manipulating the DOM. And this one is events. These two things go together. And this is the other half of that little tandem of concepts that need to be put together here. So without further ado, let's get into events. It's going to be relatively short in terms of the concepts, but there are lots and lots and lots of ways to use events to your advantage or disadvantage depending on how you do it, but there's lots of ways to handle these. So let's start with really high level concepts and then try to work our way down to something a little bit more precise. Okay, so first thing is what is an event? It's user interaction or a code condition, so a state. All right, based on this event, do something with it. So there are, if we take a step back and talk about some of the design aspects again, so that's something we covered early in the course. Heuristics, something that we didn't talk about. People take whatever experience that they had that was relative to what they're experiencing now, and they apply the same lessons to the thing that is they're experiencing now, which is technically not very rational, but it is something that people do, and it is a shortcut. It's a mental shortcut. That's what heuristic stands for. It is a shortcut to not relearn something under even slightly different conditions. So what ends up happening is that we all converge on a way of doing something, regardless if it's right or not. So events are the same way. If a button looks like a button, people are going to click on it and they expect it to do something. Okay, if a accordion looks like an accordion, they expect it to slide down. These are all things that have been set in the past. It's very difficult to change it once it's already been set and there's already a precedent for it. So when you're using your events, you have to understand the heuristic that is behind the thing that you are putting on the website. Now, up to this point, it's getting easier for students to understand this because they have been interacting with web-based technologies for a long time. So those heuristics are already baked in. A good decade ago, this wasn't true. Well, less true, at least. So our heuristics are becoming a little bit stronger, where we don't have as many deviations from what people are expecting. So this a little bit is a little bit easier for people, but it is something to be able to articulate in a interview if you ever are in that scenario where they're asking you, well, big picture, what is an event? Well, it's a representation of reality. It's events take what people are expecting, which is a heuristic, and then representing it in code. All right. So here are your common events. You have DOM mutations. You probably won't use that here, but it is common. So you have focus events, full screen inputs, mouse drag, click, errors. I think you get the point. A state of code, or the state of whatever the user is trying to do, or the state of the website is going to determine what you do. So depending on that state, that abstraction, that proxy, what are you going to do with it? So one of the things that's really important for students to understand, and people in general, when we start talking about code and programming, what people don't understand, and by people I mean normal people, is that thing that they've been interacting with the entire time is not what they think that they're interacting with, right? That buy now button is a laundry list of things that happen, right? But from their standpoint, their mental model, this button that says buy now means buy this thing. in reality, what we have to do with the code is represent that action, which is a series of actions, inside of a single conceptual model. So this is, you'll pick this up eventually when you start making it and you're going, oh yeah, actually, this thing that I'm making is, I actually need to reference this thing. The easy example is IoT devices. So if you're going to go and make automated blinds, something like that, how are you going to do that? What are you going to base that on? Right? And that's the key word. What are you going to base that on? Is it going to be sunlight? Is it going to be photons? Is it going to be motion? Is it going to be time of day? Okay. Okay, so let's say it's time of day. Okay, well, how are you going to get the time of day? Okay, so well, you can use an NTP server. Okay, that also means that your device has to be connected to the internet or an NTP device. Okay, and then that NTP device, where's that NTP device going to get that time? Now, fortunately, we've solved that problem, but you can see how these abstractions become kind of difficult to do. And a lot of programming is just using modular concepts to achieve something else. All right. So event listeners is a callback function once some sort of event or trigger is true. So just like we were using last time where we had click, when this event is true, when this happened, when this button is clicked, do this. That's what that is saying. Event listeners are asynchronous. So just like we were showing last time when we put all those debuggers in there. Okay, so we hit the onload for the window onload. Okay, we set our listeners and then nothing happened after it until we actually hit the submit button. That is asynchronous. Okay, event object is created when the trigger, when the event is triggered. So that is the event object that I started to use and then realized that I had a logic error. Okay, and then the event object will have a property called target, and you will use it often. So one of the problems of the way that I did it last time is if you ever remove that button from the DOM, that event listener is still active. And because we didn't give that function a name where it could be identifiable, there's no way to remove that listener from the DOM. Once we've created it with an anonymous function, there's no way of removing it. So that's a dangerous thing. Now you can fix this by refreshing, but if you have something like a progressive web app where you don't refresh that often, you still refresh kind of a lot, but not that often, you can easily find yourself in a condition where, hey, we removed this from the DOM and because we replaced it with all these other elements, and now suddenly we have errors all over the place because we have a bunch of event triggers that we didn't expect. So yeah, it can get confusing. Fortunately, we don't cover progressive web apps too much in this course. We will cover the very, very, very basic flavor of that at the end, but that's not even graded, so you're going to be okay. Event listener example. So very similar to what we did last time. We have show all listener, all buttons get show all button by ID, and then we're going to add a click element to it. Anonymous function, which is done right here. Okay, and then all times toggle. Okay, so right there's your API function call, event type, and then callback function. Here's another example. We used this last time as well. All right, so listening for events. You have 3 stages, okay? You have the capture, so coming down the DOM to get that event. You have the target itself that triggered the event. And then you have bubble, so back up the DOM. Most event listeners are captured on the bubble. The only exception to this is IE, so Internet Explorer, which for the most part is not used or not considered a modern browser anymore. But if you're in a government agency or like a bank or anything else that is old and don't want to update their software, you may or may not have to target IE, which at that point, then you're going to have to get your events off of the capture instead of the bubble. Okay. So here's our little example here. What I'm trying to do is highlight the class of event. And then we have a bunch of buttons inside of each one of those events. So each class of event, and I'm pretty sure I did just border on this one, is just going to highlight as a border. So I'm going to click this button down here for my example, and then we're going to get a bunch of highlights. Okay. Is this a video? Yep. Bang. Okay, so there's that. We get 2 borders, so we hit 2 of those events. Now we have 3 of those events, and now we have 4 of those events. So before we refresh there, I really need to point out that this is bubbling in its purest form. So if we click something inside of the DOM, all right, it's going to have to traverse back up the DOM. So this gives you the ability to capture an event that is not created by the trigger. That's helpful at times. It can also be a detriment depending on what you're doing. And it also confuses people because the vast majority of web developers out there use tools to do this, and the tool is always going to capture the thing immediately. But yeah, having this in your tool set is very helpful at times. You just got to remember it's there. Okay, so that's going to do it for this one. Obviously, we're going to have a little demonstration to make sure that you guys have at least a rudimentary understanding of this. We're going to recreate that little bubble example that we had there with the borders. And then I think we're going to be all set for this one. So I'll see you in the demonstration. All right, welcome back to the demonstration for event propagation. Okay, so what you see on the screen here is the template that we're going to end up using. We have a little bit of CSS styling going on over here. So if you're an Alpha State student, go ahead and download this template for how we're going to start here. If you are online, go ahead and pause the video, get this the same way. Okay, here's the index.css. I'm going to scroll down for the last bit there. And then index, or index.js, which happens to be empty. Okay, so with that said, this is what this looks like if you did it correctly. We got a button kind of in the center here, and then we're going to have a bunch of borders here in a second. Okay, so actually there's no, okay, event highlight, so I do have that there. Good. All right, so if we are going to recreate that example that we had in the presentation, the first thing that we need to do is get this button right here. So we have button class of padding. Okay, so we need that event trigger in there. Now, for the sake of demonstration, I don't have an ID on this, and I have a class of padding, but there's a bunch of classes of padding. So without getting around this problem the easy way, I want to show you guys query selector to show you that you can actually step into and get this button. Okay, so let's start with the easy one. So window.unload. Okay, so this is going to fire once the object or the window object is loaded. Okay, we're going to set our listeners. Set the listeners. Okay, Here we go. All right. And then once we're here, we need that button. And again, for the sake of demonstration, here we go. We're going to go button here. We're going to use query selector, but I am going to do it a little bit obtusely, just to show you that the query selector is very valuable if you find yourself in this condition. So I am looking for this button that's down here. Now I could do it by tag. I'm not going to. It's very inefficient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from this. Nope. There we go. I'm going to remove the space here. And then I'm going to add another dot here. So we're saying, hey, we want both of these classes on a single object. And then we're going to step into from that point and then get the object of button. Now, I am not 100% sure that that is going to work. So I'm going to save and set a debugger here. I'm going to open up my developer view. I'm going to hit this and then I'm going to see what I got. Okay, so I did get something back, but I'm not sure if it's the right thing. So let's go ahead and go over here. Class name of padding. Very, very likely is the right one. Right there, click button. We got the right one. So we're doing good here. I'm going to lessen that. Oh, this is a little happy coincidence. Notice that I move this over, that this gray box in here was the original width of the DOM. Notice that there's nothing in here. Because we got our debugger running, JavaScript never had the opportunity to re-render the DOM because we just made it bigger. Okay, just another thing going, hey, you need to be very, very, very careful about your JavaScript usage because it controls everything. All right, so I'm going to hit play here. Now our white screen is back and we got our button over here. So we're doing pretty good. So let's go ahead and make the rest of this. So we got the right button. That's good. All right. The next thing that we need is to put an event listener on this button. So we're going to go button dot add event listener. Okay. We are still going to use the event of click like so. Lowercase on the click. And then what do we want to do? We're not passing in any variable or any values. So we'll use an event here just to show you guys that it is a thing. So let's go with alert. I'm going to go with alert user. All right, let's go make that function. Function alert user, like so. We definitely want that event object. Okay. And just to show you guys the event object and how to use it, where we're going to go is triggering object. And then we're going to use that event object target. And this is going to give us back the thing that triggered the event. So whatever triggered this, which is going to be this button, and I'm going to prove that here in a second, and then we're going to use the alert function. I'm going to use a template string. So if you don't know how to do this, it is the button or immediately under the escape, like so. Okay. Event triggered by so we're going to use a $sign here and then two curly braces to essentially break this string. So this is called the template string, by the way. And then we're going to break this string and then allow some JavaScript to run here. And then we're going to go triggering object dot inner text, which is going to give us the text of that button. Okay, so the way this reads is event triggered by, and this should say click me, and then we have the actual string of button. So there's that. Let's make sure this works. Click, click button, button. All right, so that works. We got that. All right, so the next thing that we need to do is that we need an event listener on the rest of those elements that we call the event, just to demonstrate that, yes, indeed, there is an event propagation throughout the DOM, even if you're capturing a event on click. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to need here is all the events. Document, get element by class name. We could use query selector all here, but I generally stay away from that. I can't remember if it was event or events over here. Singular event. Okay. So now at this point, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to run a loop here. And generally speaking, I run while loops for general logic stuff. However, in this case, we are going to have to run a for loop, and then we're going to have to run let, the scope modifier. And I'm going to call this I 0. And the reason why we have to do it this way is because when we run this loop, we need that variable to be recreated. So when it actually triggers, we can actually pass in whatever that event is in the future. Now, we don't need it here, but it's a good practice to get into so you don't have the pains and struggles that I have had learning that little fact. Okay. Okay, so there's that. We got for let I equals 0, I event. Okay, we're doing good here. Events that, we definitely want events at x. Oh wait, no, we will end up using this, and it's not x, it's I. Events I dot style that border, and this should be a string of solid. I'll look it up here in a second. String of solid, and then we're going to need another one here instead of, should be border width. Let's go 3 pixels here. And then another one for border color. And then we will go, oh, I don't know, blue. Okay, there's that. Let's see if it worked. Let's see if we one-shot this. Woo! Okay, we one-shot that. Now, the problem is that I am not very smart and didn't put this inside of a function. So, so we're still going to need a click event. So we're going to need events. Add event listener. We still want click. And then highlight. I don't know if spelled correctly. Border. Do we want to use target again? I think we do. So let's go ahead and cut this. Don't get rid of it. So Control X. Add a new function. Highlight border. We're going to use that event object again. Current trigger event.target. Okay, there's that. And instead of I here, we're just going to use current trigger. Like so. Save. And I'm going to put a debugger here just to demonstrate what is actually happening here. Okay, so with that said, just like what we did last time, we are going to run the set listeners, we're going to set our listeners, and then we're going to wait for the response or the interaction from the user. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to open this up for a bit, and then I'm going to, about there is going to be right. Okay, let's see if I got what I want, and I do. It's right here. All right, I'm going to click this button. Bang. Event triggered by click button. And then we're going to run this. Okay, so we have our event target. So we're getting something back from our event object. And this is undefined because we haven't set it yet. So we're going to hit play, and we should get one border that is blue. We got ourselves a border that is blue. It's around the button. Okay, notice that we're back here again. We're going to hit play again. Ooh, very interesting. So we got ourselves a logic error. Very interesting. Let's see where our logic error is. Well, our logic error is because the event object is not being reset by these other triggers. Because it is just one. The element that is triggering is the button. So I was just setting a border to the button that was triggering it. So we're going to have to fix that. That is just unacceptable. Okay, so we're going to pass in event I, oh, and I still want highlight border. And we're going to pass that in. We're going to rename this to current trigger. We're going to save that, and then we're going to rerun this, and it should fix the problem. Okay. There's a blue border. Again and again and again and again. Okay, so we still got a, oh, this never updated. There's still event target. Mostly because I never got rid of it. Save. Let's try this again. Okay. There we go. This is working now. So as we keep going up the DOM, we get a new border box. Right, so this is demonstrating event propagation from a bubbling standpoint. We could do capture, but why? Really, no one does capture. So there's all our event borders. So this is proof that this is propagating up through the DOM. And if you don't, or if you want to stop that propagation, you can. Okay, so what we can do here is add event listener, blah, and then immediately after this, we can go, oh, actually, we can stop that out and out here. Stop, I think it's stop propagation. Okay, let's Google it. Okay, so well, it says on event, so event stop propagation. Well, one, I'm going to copy this. Okay, this should work. Let's go find out. Yay. So we click the button, the thing runs, right? The propagation runs, but the listener is not running. So that is interesting. Let's go ahead and throw, I have an error. That's why. There we go. So the button triggered, we get our little event here, and notice that we don't get any borders. Okay, so that was due to the stop propagation. All right, so if you don't want something to propagate, which that happens occasionally, That's how you do that. So that's going to wrap it up for this one. Obviously, this was a hyper simplistic example about event propagation. It also gives you a little bit of practice with JavaScript itself, but we're getting into the portion where we need to start putting these things together. And I think you'll come to the realization that it's most of the websites out there are really basic. They're just using the same basic things over and over and over again in different scenarios. And then sometimes you run into a problem where you go, oh, this prior feature is conflicting with this feature that we're trying to make. And then that's when you have to do some sketchy things. But what else are you going to do? So, with that said, that's all I got for this one. And I will see you in the next presentation. Later.